My sister used my credit, my savings, my entire life. Then she just smiled and said, "You're being dramatic." So, I called a lawyer and shut her down. I'm a 35-year-old guy from a typical loud Italian family in New Jersey. You know the drill. Sunday dinners are mandatory. Everyone's and everyone else's business. And Nana will practically force-feed you until you burst. Growing up, my older sister Bianca, who's 38, our parents, both 65, shared a tiny 3-bedroom house that always smelled of garlic and Mom's famous sauce. Bianca was always the golden child. Mom and Dad treated her like she was God's gift to Italian Americans or something. She was attractive, smart, and ambitious. Me, I was just a kid with a knack for working with my hands, so I ended up in construction. Don't get me wrong, I make a good living now, running a crew, enough to live comfortably and maybe even take one vacation a year if I'm lucky. But to Bianca, that was a disappointment. She never missed a chance to tell me how I settled for a blue-collar job while she pursued her grand aspirations. The problem was, most of those grand goals involved marrying rich and living a life of luxury. And for a while, she did just that. She met Luca, a 42-year-old millionaire. At one of those fancy wine-tasting events, she'd crash, pretending to be more important than she was. The guy was loaded and came from a respectable Italian family. Mom and Dad were ecstatic that their little princess had finally found the life she deserved. They organized this huge wedding that Dad literally drained his savings for, because heaven forbid Bianca didn't get absolutely everything she wanted. I remember standing there in my rented tux, watching her marry this poor sap, thinking, well, at least she'll be someone else's problem now. Boy, was I wrong. 5 years later, everything fell apart. Luca filed for divorce out of the blue. I had my suspicions, so it wasn't entirely out of nowhere. She kept bringing up her personal trainer at the gym, always texting, always finding excuses to spend more time there. I never said anything, because you know how Italian families are about those kinds of things. I'm pretty sure Luca saw her doing more than just Pilates, if you catch my drift. The divorce was messy, like throwing plates in restaurants messy. Yes, she actually did that. Made the local paper and everything. Luca had a good lawyer and a solid prenup. He's a smart guy. Bianca ended up with little more than monthly support for their 9-year-old daughter, Gianna. That's when the real fun began. Bianca was a wreck. She had zero real-world skills after years of playing trophy wife. She and Gianna needed a place to live and money to survive. In a normal family, the parents would step in to help their daughter get back on her feet. Nope. Mom and Dad suddenly decided it was time to celebrate their golden years. They just retired and were planning all these trips to Italy to reconnect with their roots or something. They basically told Bianca they couldn't help because they had to find themselves. Remember how Dad blew all his money on her wedding? Yeah, apparently that was their only contribution to her adult life. So guess who volunteered? Yours truly, Rocca. Not my real name, but close enough. Because I'm the one with a steady job and no responsibilities. Their words. Apparently being single means I have nothing better to do than support my sister. At first, it was just supposed to be temporary. Just until I find a job, Rocca. Just help with groceries for a few months, Rocca. Gianna needs new school supplies, Rocca. You know the drill. Before I knew it, I was paying her rent. $1,600. A month for a decent place because God forbid Bianca live in a standard apartment. Utilities, groceries, and extras for Gianna. Did the kid need a laptop for school? Uncle Ruckus got it. Dance classes? Uncle Rucka will cover it. Birthday parties? You guessed it. I kept telling myself it was for Gianna. The kid is amazing smart. Sweet, and nothing like her mother. It's hardly her fault her mom's a train wreck, right? Plus, in Italian families, you're expected to help family no matter what. Mom drilled into us as kids that family comes first above all else. It's funny how that only seemed to apply to helping Bianca, not me. This went on for 5 years. I spent those 5 years watching my savings disappear. For 5 years, because Bianca needed help with Gianna's summer camp, Bianca spent 5 years looking down her nose at me while living off my money. The worst part? Bianca acted like she was doing me a favor by letting me help, as if she was giving. me a purpose in life or something? She'd make these little comments at family dinners about how nice it was that I was so invested in them. She always spoke in this tone, like she was talking about a kid's lemonade stand. But hey, I was raised to believe family supports family. So, I gritted my teeth and kept writing the checks. I kept telling myself it was only temporary. Then, about a year ago, Bianca finally found a decent job. Like really decent. Some human resources position at a pharmaceutical company, good benefits, good pay, the whole package. I think it was around $65,000 a year. Not exactly rolling in money, but way better than the miscellaneous consulting work she claimed to be doing before. Spoiler alert, she wasn't actually consulting anyone. I figured this was it. My chance to gradually step back from being her personal ATM. I assured her I'd be there for her for a few months while she adjusted to her new job. Be a good brother and all that, make sure the transition went smoothly. For Gianna's sake? That's when things got weird. First, Bianca showed up to Sunday dinner wearing these beautiful new shoes. Then, a flashy new phone. Then she got a whole new wardrobe because her old clothes clearly weren't professional enough for a new job. Whatever. Fine. Maybe she got a signing bonus or something. But it kept escalating. Every week she'd show up at Mom and Dad's house with some new, expensive item, fancy handbags, jewelry. And she even mentioned joining this really expensive gym because her old one didn't have the right atmosphere. Meanwhile, I was still paying her rent and utilities because she kept insisting she needed a little more time to save. Quick side note, Sunday dinners are sacred in our family. Miss one, and Mom acts like you've committed a crime against humanity. So, every week, I had to sit there and watch this circus. Bianca flaunting her new stuff. Mom and Dad beaming at their lovely princess getting back on her feet. And me discreetly calculating how much of my money went toward her rent versus her shopping spree. Aunt Teresa, who's 64, was the only one who seemed to sense something was off. She'd give me these looks across the table like she knew I was about to lose it. Thank God for her, by the way. She's the only sane one in our family besides me. This went on for several months. Bianca got more and more entitled, and I got more and more frustrated. Then came the Sunday that made me snap. We were all sitting around the table. Me, Bianca, Gianna, Mom, Dad, and Aunt Teresa. Mom made her delicious lasagna, which Bianca usually complains is too high in calories. Everything was normal, right? Bianca was bragging about something work-related. Dad was discussing their upcoming trip to Sicily, and Gianna was fiddling with her phone under the table. Afterward, Bianca said this awful thing. Oh, I'm thinking of getting this gorgeous Gucci bag I saw. It's only $500, and it would be perfect for client meetings. I nearly choked on my wine. $500 for a stinking purse, and I'm still paying her $1,600 rent. I truly tried to stay calm. I asked her casually. That's a lot for a purse when you're still getting help with bills, don't you think? I still hear her response in my head. She chuckles like I'm some foolish kid and says, don't be cheap, Raka. A professional needs to look professional. Cheap? She called me cheap. I hadn't bought new work boots in 2 years because her rent ate into my budget. I missed my best friend's wedding in Vegas because she needed money for Gianna's summer camp. I hadn't been on a real date in months because every spare dime went to her emergencies. The worst part was, it wasn't even what she said. It was everyone else's reaction. Mom and Dad suddenly became very interested in their plates. Gianna looked uncomfortable. Poor kid, she's used to her mother's nonsense by now. Only Aunt Teresa looked like she was about to say something, but I spoke first. I slowly put down my fork, took a drink of wine, and just let it all out. I don't yell around Gianna, just the cold, harsh truth. Let's talk about cheap Bianca. Let's talk about how I've been paying your rent for 5 years while you buy designer crap. Let's talk about how our parents won't help because they're too busy finding themselves in Italy. Let's talk about how you looked down on my simple job while living off it. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a meatball drop. Then I said what was really important. I'm done. No more rent, no more utilities, no more groceries, no more nothing. You've got a good job. Great. Time to be an actual adult and pay your own bills. Bianca's expression went through 5 different emotions in 2 seconds. Astonished, angry, afraid, and trying to figure out if I was serious, Aunt Teresa actually started slowly clapping. "Way to go, Rocca, right there at the table." Mom looked like she was about to faint. Dad wouldn't even look at me. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door, but I came back for one more shot. "And Bianca, that $500 purse? Maybe spend it on rent instead, because I mean it. I'm done being your bank." Then I walked out. Aunt Teresa followed me, hugged me, and told me how glad she was that someone was finally standing up to Bianca's BS. Bianca should have blown up my phone with angry texts or voicemails, right? That's her usual move. She once texted me 47 times because I was 10 minutes late picking up Gianna from dance class. But nope, complete radio silence. For a week, there was nothing but silence. Strangely, the silence affected me more than her yelling. I kept checking my phone, expecting to find missed calls or anything. Even my WhatsApp family groupies, we have one. It's usually just Mom sending odd prayer chains and food photos, was absolutely quiet. Aunt Teresa did, however, send me a private message saying, "They'll get over it. You did the right thing. I skipped the following Sunday dinner." I texted Mom that I had to work, which wasn't entirely false. I'd picked up an extra shift. I could just feel her displeasure over the phone. She responded passive-aggressively. "That's fine. Gianna asked about you, but work is more important than family." I understand. It's the classic Italian mom guilt trip right there. Then, about 9:30 p.m. on Wednesday, someone started hammering on my door. I was already in my sweatpants, half asleep on the couch watching the game. When I opened up, Mom and Dad were standing there as if I had personally canceled Christmas. Mom barged in without even saying hello. Typical. She started pacing around my living room in her church attire. It'd probably come straight from evening mass. Dad just stood there with that disappointed parent expression he's mastered over the years. "We need to talk about Bianca," Mom said, like she was about to begin peace talks or something. I got a Coke from the fridge and offered them some. They both gave me that look, like I'd suggested we rob a bank. "Fine. More for me." "She's struggling, Rocca," Dad eventually admitted. "Gianna doesn't deserve to suffer because of your stubbornness." I almost spat out my soda. "What's with my stubbornness? Let me get this straight," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "You too, who've been on cruises and wine tours instead of helping your own daughter, want to lecture me about causing Gianna pain?" Mom's face had that expression where she looks like she's sucking a lemon. "That's not fair. We're retired. Worked hard all our lives. You're young. You have a wonderful career. And Bianca is your sister." "Sister?" I responded. "But I guess that only matters when it's convenient, right?" This set off the whole thing. Mom started ranting about family responsibilities, how I'm heartless, and how Gianna is an innocent child. Dad kept making little comments about how this isn't how they raised me. The best part, they hit me with a gem. "We don't enable her the way you do. She needs to learn responsibility." I lost it. Like, absolutely lost it. I started laughing right in their faces. Oh, now she has to learn responsibility. Where was this attitude 5 years ago when I started paying her bills? Or was this while she was spending my money on fancy crap? "Mom, this is such convenient timing, Dad." Dad tried to interrupt with some nonsense about how I'm being cold and how this isn't like me. I just stepped to my door and held it open. "Thanks for stopping by," I said, "but this is how it will be from now on. Bianca wants to act like an adult. It's time to pay bills like one." They left muttering Italian under their breath. Always. A clue that they're furious. Mom didn't even try to force leftovers on me, which, in Italian mom speak, means I'm dead to her. Aunt Teresa contacted me the following morning. Apparently, Bianca had been wailing to everyone about how she might have to move to a risky neighborhood, Ika, somewhere without a Whole Foods nearby, after her nasty brother cut her off. Mom and Dad had been making the rounds at church, telling everyone about their once sweet son who had abandoned his family. But here's the deal. Aunt Teresa learned from a friend at the salon that Bianca had been talking about a lavish vacation. She was planning a spa weekend or whatever. With what money? That's what I wanted to know. Then Friday night, I got this call from Bianca. Her voice was all sweet, just like when she used to trick me into buying her stuff when we were younger. Just wanted to let you know I'm moving out of the apartment next month, she said, as if we were having a regular chat. What? Can't afford it without me? I asked, possibly sounding more arrogant than I should. Her laughter sent chills down my spine. Oh, I can afford it. I've just found something better. It turns out she was moving in with Mom and Dad. Offered Gianna their guest room so she wouldn't have to live in a terrible apartment. Bianca sounded delighted with herself, like she had won a game. The next month, I got a call from my accountant. He told me to check my credit report right away. Apparently, my sister used my information to set up additional bank accounts. I quickly signed into my Experian account. My hands were shaking so much that I had to type my password 3 times. Guys, what I saw nearly made me throw up. Over the past 6 months, 4 new credit cards had been opened in my name. For everything. Was maxed out. We're talking thousands of dollars in charges to places I'd never heard of, including Saks Fifth Avenue, Nordstrom, and some upscale boutiques in the city. Even flight tickets to Miami. I guess that explains her work trip last month. What was? The total damage, $23,400. Let that sink in. $23,000. That's nearly what I had saved for a down payment on a home. All gone because my sister decided to engage in identity theft. I'm not proud of what happened next, but I absolutely lost it. I threw my phone across the room. Thank God for decent cases. Punched a wall. Yeah, I know. Smart move. My hand still hurts. Then I sat on my kitchen floor, experiencing what felt like a panic attack. I called Aunt Teresa, since she's the only one in this family who has common sense. It was around 11 p.m. at this point. She noticed the second ring. When I told her what Bianca did, she started cursing in Italian, the kind of stuff Nana would have cleansed our mouths with soap for. You need to call the police, she replied. But here's the thing. Bianca has Gianna. What happens if I press charges against my niece? She's the only innocent person in this mess. I spent the entire night going over the charges. Designer spa. Treatments. Fancy earrings. This woman was living the high life on my credit card while I was eating ramen to save money. There were even fees for Gianna's private school tuition, which explains why Bianca abruptly stopped asking me for school expenses. The next morning, after about 2 hours of sleep and enough espresso to kill a horse, I called a lawyer. The guy specializes in identity theft cases. My consultation cost $400, but it was well worth it. Here's the fun part. Bianca didn't even try to cover her tracks. Every single order was delivered to her address. She used her personal phone number and email address for the accounts. The lawyer described it as one of the most clear-cut cases of identity theft he'd ever encountered. With this proof, he says she faces significant charges, but there's always a but. Since she's family, maybe we could try negotiating first. He proposed that we send her a formal letter seeking complete payback before taking the criminal path. Give her one chance to fix this before I damage her life more than she deserves. I thought about Gianna, and I agreed. So, I called Bianca. My hands were shaking again, but this time with rage. Hey, Johnny, she said cheerfully, like nothing was amiss. How's my favorite? Cut her off. I know about the credit cards. There was no sound. Then I can explain shut up. Just shut up for once in your life and listen. My voice was so frigid that I barely recognized it.